everyone. Welcome to Port Connects, the Port Jervis Alumni Podcast, the Where Are They Now podcast, and a warm welcome to today's guest, class of 2017. Welcome, Miss Erin Cornell.
Hello, Mr. Murata. It is a pleasure to be here.
It is great to see you, North Carolina. You are in Brunswick County, Belville Elementary, and a special education teacher. Welcome, Ms. Cornell.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here currently. We just dismissed at 4 o'clock as my contract hours are over. So it's 4:01. So I'm officially free. But I have an office off my classroom. So that's where I'm seated now.
Still working, still there, and we appreciate you making some time for us. I was fortunate enough to be Erin's principal way back in the day. Any family and friends that are watching, Port Jervis alum, Port Jervis community members, please say hello in the chat and say hello to Erin. But Erin, so thrilled that you went into education and that you're a teacher now. Tell me, Erin, let's start there. When in your career, when did you know you were like, wow, this is what I think I want to do?
Sure. Well, if you ask my mom, it would probably be when I was about 6, and every pen and Post-it note and highlighter and loose leaf paper in our house went missing because I would take everything and set up my own classroom in my bedroom for as long as I can remember. I've always been like teacher's pet, bookworm. Like that was just always me. I loved learning. I loved having good relationships with my teachers. I loved schoolwork. I loved having everything organized. So I think teaching was always kind of calling my name. I would say that special ed, someone super close to me, like in my life, growing up, had dyslexia. So I saw that when I was super young and had heard a lot about like this IEP term, and that didn't mean anything to little me. But as time went on, I started to hear a little bit more about that and hear friends that, had learning difficulties complain about teachers. And I feel like it was this resounding, like, oh, if they would just listen to me, like, oh, if I just had this. And in my brain, it's just always been so simple. And the answer is just like, why don't you listen to what the kid needs and meet them there and then work with them from there versus trying to make them fit your mold. Like you make the mold to fit the kid. And after high school, once I graduated, before I came down to North Carolina for school, I was employed at the Center for Developmental Disabilities in Pennsylvania. I started there in the summer camp, and I was in preschool classrooms, and we had a cornerstone program, which was an applied behavioral analysis for students with early diagnosed autism. And I would be on the playground and those students would come out with their one-on-ones. And I was just always very drawn to the work that they did with those students, the socialization skills that they targeted and worked on. So when I was a freshman at High Point University in High Point, North Carolina, our professors asked, when you're declared a special ed major, if you want to do adaptive or general. And in New York, education in general, terms are different everywhere. So I was like, I don't really know what that means. And they explained both tracks. And I said, well, I think I would like to do adaptive after I explained the summer experience that I had had. So my first placement, freshman year, first semester of college, was at a public separate school in Guilford County for children with significant disabilities and also like medically fragile considerations. So I was in a kindergarten classroom there first semester freshman year, and I had some kiddos with a lot of considerations and a lot of needs, and it just made me like want to know so much more and understand it. So I just kind of knew that I had found my niche. So
Wow. Certainly your mom is watching here. PTA President Jenny Cornell, Mr. Fisher, a shout out. Erin, that's so beautiful to hear and see. Who were some teachers when you were at Port that they did something, or their personalities that you said, man, I really want to be like that. Oh, I like that. I'm going to take that from this person. What were some characteristics or mindsets that you saw from some of our staff that you took with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the first person that stands out is probably my kindergarten teacher. I had Mrs. Peters in kindergarten. And I just remember that like that classroom was like run like a machine. Like I just remember like memory, bringing me back to those times. It's like forever ago now. But we knew what was expected of us, and you knew that if you did what was expected, that you would be rewarded for that, and you would do well in the classroom. And you knew that if you didn't meet the expectations of what was, the set boundaries in the classroom, that there were going to be consequences for that. And I think that that's really necessary for 5-year-olds. So I just remember her having like definitely instilling like respect. Like that was a very big thing, like in her classroom kind of philosophy. In second grade, I had Mrs. Quinn, and she was just an incredible educator. And I remember working a lot with peers, like in second grade. That was kind of the first time that I remember like our desks were seated in threes. And I remember having the opportunity to like sit and like turn and talk and table talks, and working with other students and collaborating in that fashion. Mr. Fisher, I had him in sixth grade. It was actually his first year teaching. So I don't mean to date you here, Mr. Fisher, but now that I'm a teacher too. But I will never forget that sixth grade year, because like now that I'm an educator, the male teachers sometimes end up with the more behaviorally impacted students. And I think that was probably the case when I was in that class. And I just remember I would help him grade papers, like I said, I always wanted to be a teacher. And I would take a red pen and I'd go through, he would block out the names, but I would help grade papers. And he had the same thing. There was there was just an atmosphere of respect in that classroom, and you knew what was expected of you, and he expected you to rise and meet that challenge, and didn't give people an excuse to not meet that, but also recognize students for where they were at and the kind of supports, and most importantly, like the backgrounds that a lot of these kids were coming from, and knowing that we might all have the same expectations, but kids do require different kind of tailored instruction to meet those expectations depending on where they're coming from. So elementary, that's kind of my rundown there. In middle school, I remember Miss Elston in English. She gave me the What If Award because I would ask a million questions in class whenever we would do instruction. And I still ask 1,000 questions to this day about things. Mrs. Love in middle school, I remember her just having like a very excited tone about math. And I've never been a math student. So her just like energy in the classroom is definitely something that stuck out to me. And she's actually seen my mom in passing since I've graduated college and in teaching now, and gave my mom like a word to pass along to me of just like, you need to take, as you're a teacher, like you need to take care of yourself. Like you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's just something that's stuck with me. And I try to live out now that I'm in the profession. And then in high school, I feel like there's just Port Jervis High School for the time that I was there was an incredible place. I think like they're really, I can't say yes. Kudos to our admin. We, in that time, like I really and truly, I don't look back and I don't have like teachers that like didn't meet an expectation, or like I don't really have like a bad taste in my mouth for any teachers. Like every teacher that I had, I just think was incredible, and they worked really hard at their job to make students feel seen and to make us feel supported in what we were working towards. Miss Doherty was incredible in math. Miss Bloodworth was incredible with me in math. I went in freshman year for math, and I was in a inclusion class because I had scored so poorly on my middle school end of grade testing. And I sat down, and I remember she was going through the roster, and she said my name, and she kind of like gave me a look. And then after class, she like paused me, and she's like, "Why are you in here?" And I was like, "Well, I got a 2 on my math test." And she was like, that's not you. We're going to work on this, and we're going to figure it out. And then I got mastery on all my regents through high school. And if it weren't for that one comment, instilling some confidence in me at the time, I don't think that I would have just always said, "I'm not good at math." That was always my thing. And then I got Miss Doherty, and I told her, "I'm not good at math." And her response was, "You're not good at math yet." And she just worked really hard to always bring me to where I was. Miss Stankunis was incredible. She was my volleyball coach all of high school. So, we had that like student athlete and coach connection as well. But she was just always very excited about the content that she was teaching. So it made it really easy for us as students to kind of get on board and follow along with that. Miss Witherow in English class, I had her for honors English, for Syracuse English. And that was like my first introduction to like a college course. And I remember being like, what is happening? But again, like she brought the energy, she set the tone for the lessons in the classroom. And I think that that's just what's most important, especially with the age group, to make sure that we like are getting what we need out of the instruction as well. So
your memory is unbelievable. You went through
I know.
from kindergarten through 12th grade. Yeah. Your memory is outstanding. So many Port Jervis people tuning in. Miss Fisher, Miss Parza, Mr. Marco, Miss Mischuk. And again, Mr. Fisher's on here. It's great to see so many people tuning in. Erin, we're so proud of you. And then to hear what you're doing, where you're teaching, and the specific classroom. So let's talk a little bit about Belleville Elementary. You were the rookie of the year last year.
I was
teaching. Yeah. Tell me about that recognition. Tell me how you did in your first year.
Sure. So first, kind of stepping into the classroom, it was really hard, like going into being a new teacher. I feel like I had a really good education, so I felt confident in like what I knew, but it was kind of, I was nervous about the delegation part within the classroom that I teach, working with, I have a self-contained setting. So all of the students that I work with, they see me for all of their academics. They're with me all day long. We lunch together. We go to recess together. I'm with them from the moment they get here till the moment they leave. And they all have a significant cognitive disability, is kind of what the term is to place them within a setting that would constitute my licensure being where they're best served. And I have 2 classroom teacher assistants, and going into that as a first year teacher was like a big concern for me. I was kind of like, how am I going to tell somebody that's older than me and been in education probably longer than I've been alive, like what to do or how to do it? So that was definitely a learning curve that I had to take on, but I'm very lucky that I have an incredible staff here at Belleville, so that all the TAs that I've had, I've been very fortunate to work with them and work through stuff with them and brainstorm, and they respect me. Although I'm young, they do respect me and my knowledge of the profession as a whole. So that's been incredible. And then I would just say that first year teaching, I had 6 students at the start of the year. I can't tell my first year story without starting off with like probably the most impactful part. We were about 4 weeks into the school year, and I had 6 students, and one of my students who had multiple disabilities due to, he had gotten very sick when he was born. So he had some cognitive effects from that, and he had contracted COVID, unfortunately, within like the first 4 weeks of the school year, and ended up passing away from the complications of that. So navigating that, the first 4 weeks of my career was definitely challenging. Wow. Absolutely. But I think that it was something that I had to really, again, like step up and learn how to lead through that. Because I had to set the tone, like all of the educators that I've had like through my career have done and modeled for me. Like that's just what I needed to do. I needed to set the tone. I needed to make sure that my staff felt supported, that they knew that they could take their days when they needed to, that we could talk about them, we could cry, we could look at pictures, you know. I never wanted my students to feel like they would ask questions about them, and I never wanted us to just kind of go like glance over his name as if it were something that we can't talk about. Like, although it may be an abstract concept to my students, they were 5th graders. All of my students at the time, they had been in the same class since kindergarten. So they know that a piece of them, their little cohort was missing. So I tried to address that as best as possible, but it did, start out rocky, and just for that sake alone. But then I had truly and honestly, it was an incredible year. I had some of the probably most challenging but best learning experiences that I could have asked for with the students that I had. The photos that are on the kind of picture that we're going around for this podcast. Yeah, they were 2 of my boys that I had, and they were just wonderful. I had one student who was totally blind, and that was a learning curve for sure. Again, because in my schooling, like you learn about, hey, you might have a student that may have deafness. You may have a student that may have may be blind, but we don't really like go deep diving into like what that really looks like or what that means. So I just kind of had to like learn him and learn what he needed and try to, take in the world as he would and address and differentiate lessons to reach him. And he had a great year. He had an incredible growth. His story is just like amazing. He's changed my view of learning and just life and love completely for the rest of my life. So yeah, we had some trials for sure, but we had a lot of growth academically, socially, just relationally. I still talk to most of the families of my students from last year. Again, I only have like 6 students at a time, so it's easy to you kind of have to have that like close like family relationship almost. I'm in constant contact with the parents. So it's been wonderful that I still kind of get to keep up on all of them as well. So
wow, congratulations on the award. And again, you mentioned the word easy in there about communicating with the parents, but I don't think anything about your job is easy looking at that. And now you're in your second year. You actually have people coming to look at your classroom to observe, maybe watch how you're doing things to kind of see how it's done. People coming to see you in your second year. That's incredible, Erin.
Yeah. I definitely, last year, our behavior specialist here, his name's Christopher Shepard. He's incredible. He's just a whiz at all things like EC and behavior. He taught in an adaptive classroom for, I believe, 14 years before he became a behavior specialist. And this, like the classroom that I have now was his classroom. Like I find materials and things with his name on it all the time. And he told me last year, he was like, kid, it's not going to take long. They're going to send people in here. Like they did that to me. And I was like, oh yeah. Like you're just flattering me. You're just trying to make me stay. Like, and this year that our instructional coach here at Belleville had contacted me and asked if I would be interested in having some people observe. And then my regional coordinator for the exceptional children's department here had asked if I would be comfortable with that. So I had a first-year teacher come in the fall who had just stepped in, and he didn't have a teaching license. He was just kind of like lateral entry, but just had some experience with students with disabilities. And he came in the fall, and that was great. And then I had a first-year teacher from a local, like an elementary school a little bit closer to here at Belleville, come about a month back. And she hasn't like a students with disabilities degree, but not in a self-contained setting like what I went to school for. And then yesterday I had 3 ladies come, one of which is a first-year teacher in a classroom like mine. Another one is kind of like a step above restrictive wise my classroom from that same school. And then their instructional coach came as well to observe. So I hope it's helpful. And I know I talk a lot. So I told him, I'm like, if I'm telling you too much, or if there's too many links in the email, just let me know. You don't have to open all of them. But this is what I love. And I like when other people love it too. So it's easy to talk about and share what I do know. So
yeah. Well, it's incredible to hear. Your friend Jean Marie Shields is watching, one of our special ed experts, Miss Fitzgerald. And again, I love that Miss Musicoach said you were a natural right out of high school. It's great to see it kind of manifesting itself. Erin, teaching itself is tiring, taking care of yourself, and but teaching your specific class and your grade is exhausting. How are you taking care of yourself? How do you rejuvenate? How do you continue to show up energized and with a positive attitude for your students?
Yeah. Everyone this sounds so like counteractive, and everyone's always shocked when I say this, but I try to work out in the morning before school. And like, I know that that's not everyone's thing, but like, I think just in general, doing something before I have to be here, like for myself, definitely like sets the tone for my day. Like the days that I'm able to get up early and I can go for a walk, or I go to the gym, or even if I just wake up early enough to like actually sit down and eat breakfast and listen to a podcast or read a book or something. The days that I start my day with what I enjoy first before I like come here and pour everything out of me, for my boys, those are the days that I feel the most like ready to take on the day as far as like energy and like mental space wise. And then I try to just kind of keep up on like what I need to do for myself as well, like outside of school. So I try to see my friends regularly. I play in a like rec wiffle ball league every Thursday. So it sounds
Right.
silly, but like it's just something that to like look forward to on the weekdays. Like I saw a quote that was like, you can't live for the weekends. And I try to do that. I try to keep myself busy on the weekdays as well, because it's not, if I'm not there, I'd probably just be at home kind of like slugging around anyway. So I try to fill my time with things that make me excited, see people that bring me joy and are good in friendship. So I try to do those kind of things.
You have wiffle ball today? Is that
I do.
happening today?
Today's our first game of the
Oh
spring.
my God. I hope I don't pull you away from the game here.
No, they
Wow.
unfortunately they do start kind of late. So the game's not until 8. So I have plenty of time.
Oh my goodness. I'm getting ready for that. You're going to
I know.
Wow. Incredible. Again, incredible to hear this. Erin, in terms of equity and inclusivity, so many times kids with disabilities, I know we're in a different world now, 2024, but just they get left out of things. They get, people forget them or just assume they can't do it. Tell me some ways that you advocate for your kids and you make sure they're included. You make sure they're highlighted because it's so important for their development and their recognition. So how do you do that for your students?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of starts with relationships like with the gen ed teachers like in the building for sure, because I always say like I teach on an island. Like my kids are my kids and they're with me all day long, and the only people they really see are elective teachers and then their support specialists with speech and OT or PT. And I don't like that. That's just the connotation of like, and that's how it is and that it can't change. So I tried to like get to know a lot of the general ed teachers. So last year they do a lot of like teacher hangouts, outside of school. So like I always tried to go last year as I was just trying to like navigate first year teaching. So that this way I could like get to know some teachers like outside of school instead of like, I don't have time in my day to walk down and be like, hey, second grade, what's going on today? But I could make time outside of school. So I tried to do that. And I sent emails to all the grade level leads at the start of the year and just say like, hey, like this is my caseload. I have this many kids in your grade as you guys are preparing for field trips or planned like holiday events, like let me know so that I can get my kids involved if it's appropriate. That is one thing that I try my best to push. Like I try to get my kids as much exposure to typically developing peers as possible, and also allow typically developing peers to experience children with significant disabilities. But I also, a lot of times the activity that I would be kind of trying to even involve my kids in, it wouldn't be something that they're interested or would make them happy sometimes, like it could be way too overstimulating, or when it has academic based points, like it would just be way too frustrating for them. So I try to seek out the opportunities that they would best fit within. And then also when we have like our parties for upcoming like holidays and stuff, I'll like invite kids in the hallway. Like if I do car rider duty, I'm like, hey, talk to your teacher. Who's your teacher? And I'll send their teacher an email and say like, hey, we're going to have like Friendsgiving in our classroom if blah, blah, blah wants to come. And like we had some kids come last year for Friendsgiving and like sit in the room for that just to kind of, and they kind of were like, what's going on here? But that's part of it. They just got to learn. And in the cafeteria, if kids are like looking at our table, if I have a student like kind of having a behavior like exhibiting like stimulating like autism typical like stimulating behaviors, I try to go over and I'm like, hey, what's your name? I'm like, I see you looking at my friend, like, do you have any questions? Because I never want to look at a kid and be like, don't stare. Like that just makes disability a dirty word, and I don't like that. I like to try to make them understand, make them see the kids as kids first. They're just they're just not they don't take the same route as everybody else to kind of get to where they want to be or what they want to do. So
wow, excellent. Erin, really good. Ms. Fitzgerald giving you a shout out. Those kids deserve you. They're lucky to have you. Erin, again, you're a bright, shining star. What's something that's really challenging for you? Something that's just frustrating. It's kind of hard for you to get past. What's something that you're struggling with?
Yeah, I think I think that's something that I can struggle with, like in the profession as a whole, is I feel like education can be like very catty. Like I think that people can get stuck in their ways or harp on the parts of education that stink, right? Like all of us have our own gripes about like what's wrong and how it's broken and the system's failing everyone, right? And I think that I get really frustrated when it's just like all like people are very like negative focused, because I don't think that that's productive or like conducive at all. And I think that sometimes, as I'm the minority in my building, as far as like our exceptional children's department is much smaller than the gen ed people. So I feel like gen ed gets a little bit more of like a say about what kind of activities or like changes need to happen in the school, and they don't really come to EC first. And that can just be challenging for me, because I'm like, well, what some people may find to be the biggest like problem in education that they just want to harp on isn't really something that we have control over. Like, why don't we focus on like school-based things that we have control over and go about fixing them, or finding the source of what it is that's frustrating so many people across the board and work on that versus just complaining about it. I think because like in my classroom, if I just complained about the things that my kids did or complained about how hard my days were, but never actually did anything to change it, like I would have quit a long time ago. So I think it's frustrating to hear that. And also I don't have a planning time. So everything that I do for my kiddos and lesson planning and IEP paperwork and all of that sort of stuff, it happens on my own time. So that's just, that's not fun, but it's for the kids, and what the amount of time that I spend with them throughout the day, if I were to step out and have someone come in and cover my classroom, I know that my kids wouldn't be getting as much out of it as they would staying in routine and staying with like the three of us that are with them throughout the entire day. And it's not, to me, 45 minutes of getting to plan isn't worth jeopardizing 45 minutes of productive time with the kids. So I do wish that there was some sort of solution, but as of right now, I don't have one. So I try not to complain about it, like I said, but I wish there was some sort of compensation or something that I could do about that. But yeah.
Well, you certainly seem to be solving the problems, and well said from a rookie teacher, second year teacher, about the, kind of what can we control and not just listening to the noise.
Yeah.
Well said. Erin, there's a lot of people that watch this podcast. There's a lot of people watching right this second. What would you tell maybe some of the kids that are going to watch this, who might be thinking about going into education, who might have said, hey, I'm kind of curious about this, but COVID, kind of changed a lot of stuff. But what would you tell maybe that eighth grader that has their classroom set up like you did? What would you say to those kids who are thinking about becoming teachers?
Yeah, I would say to not let other people discourage you. Like, I think that, like I said, with all the gripes and the problems that everyone like kind of harps on in education right now, I think it's really easy to get kind of guided towards picking a different course. Even for me, like not just like for context here, like I've always been very fortunate that I've done well academically. Like I've always done well in my courses. I've always gotten good grades. I've scored well on Regents exams and all that kind of thing. And I remember in my junior and senior year, when I said I wanted to be a teacher, I heard over and over and over again, well, don't be a teacher, be a speech pathologist. They'll make more money. Like, you're too smart for that. Don't go to school just for education. Like, you have to go and you should go into occupational therapy, and then you still get to work with those kids, but you'll make more money and you could do well in that school. And like, that's not what it was about for me. Like, it's about what made me feel happy, what made me feel fulfilled, what I felt like I was the best at. Like, I think I could be good at a lot of professions that were suggested to me, but I want to be great at what I do. And I think that if teaching is what makes you feel great, or connecting with students is what makes you feel purposeful, or, setting up a classroom, or organizing things, or making your borders match your calendar, and those the kind of things excite you, then like that's great. And you're allowed to feel that way. You don't need to go into a different profession just because it would pay you more, or you get more status from it. I think that's like, education can kind of get that. It's either, oh, you're so patient, I could never do that, or it's why would you ever do that? Versus any sort of more encouraging words. So I would just encourage younger students that if that's what they're hearing, that it's going to be worth it, and you'll feel a lot more fulfilled taking a career path that you've chosen for yourself based on like how you feel about it versus what you think you'll get out of it. So
wow. Erin, I feel like I'm talking to a 20-year professional here. The way you're speaking, and you're such a beacon of hope, and thank you for bringing the respect level to education. Yeah. I'm sure some of the people that said those things to you were educators themselves.
Yeah,
and I loved what you said about that. You're going to be excellent at it. And you're doing it. You're making it happen at some of the most challenging levels. So I'm just thrilled here.
Thank you.
Erin, another thing that we notice in Port Jervis, a lot of times if our kids are far away, like you did, going to North Carolina, they haven't been too far outside Port Jervis. What were some of the things that you did to really thrive in college, to make it in college? Again, kids who went away to college and then they were back by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
How do we empower our kids to do well at school? What were some things that you did in college to get through it and make it work?
Yeah. I would say it's not embarrassing to like lean on your professors or your first year counselor. Or I remember like so many friends of mine in college that like lived in the same building would have meetings with their academic advisors and they wouldn't go. They're like, oh, I don't want to meet with her. I'm not going. I'm like, what? Why would you not go? Like, that's such like, it's a resource. Like, why would you not take that? And I think that my freshman year, I like went to my academic advisor and I was kind of like, I'm a special ed major. Like what on campus clubs or activities like deal with inclusivity or like disabilities kind of thing. And we went from there and I learned a lot. And then I was far away from home and I was extremely fortunate to be raised in the family that I was, and the fact that I was even able to go away to a private university through help from my parents and help from like scholarships that I was awarded through Port Jervis, and then also ones that I gained through High Point itself. But I got a job on campus too, because I was like, well, that's an easy way to meet people, and it gives me spending money instead of being like, hey, mom. So I did that. You couldn't work on campus as a freshman, but I had interviewed second semester freshman year, and I got involved in that. I met so many people that way and then that way I knew a lot of people not in my major. Like, I think it's really easy to meet and make friends like within your major, but it's kind of like you don't want to live with your best friend, they say, because you have too many things in common. Like, I think if you're just constantly around, nursing majors or whatever the case may be, and you're just in the same mundane things all the time, you don't really get much like growth or different opportunities within the friendship. So that was something I tried to do. Like, my friends were from a bunch of different things. And I would also like, I never went into something in college because I felt like I had to. Like, sorority was a big, like, Greek life was a large presence on High Point's campus. And I'm not knocking Greek life. I think it's wonderful. And I think a lot of people get incredible gains out of it, but I just never felt like it was something I wanted to do. And I didn't feel like I needed to or wanted to. And a lot of people were like, why wouldn't you rush? Like, rush. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And I didn't. And I still made a lot of friends that were in different sororities and got to go to the events and stuff. And it was free for me. So that was definitely cool. But I think just like seeking out the opportunities, and it's not embarrassing to plug into the resources that your college has. Like, I think that there's like this kind of stigma around like freshmen being like too eager and like, it's like dorky to go to the events and like the new student events and all that sort of stuff. But I took advantage of it because I was like, well, how else am I going to meet anybody or get to know people? And I think that if you and everybody's there doing the same thing, right? Like whether they're from 5 minutes down the road or they're from 16 hours away, like everybody's there as a freshman to learn and get plugged in. So
I went to college about 40 minutes from where High Point is in Guilford, and it was a culture shock to me. I certainly learned some new words and some new foods. What was the culture shock for you as a New Yorker going down to North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think one thing when I was in college that I definitely got away with is that High Point markets the Northeast. So the majority of the students at High
Okay.
Point were like New York, New Jersey,
Okay.
Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, a lot of Long Island.
Mm.
So I was like our student body was very kind of like I felt very at ease, I guess, amongst our student body. But professors taught, I remember like I felt like they talked so slow because they had their Southern accents, and I would be sitting there like, and then people told me I talked way too fast. So yeah, like get on with it, please. But then people had told me like, would be like, what did you just say? And I talked too fast. So, and I remember I've had some Southern friends tell me like, you're intense. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? And they're like, you're really intense. And they're like, where are you from? And when I say New York, they're like, that's it. I'm like, what? So, I guess that's a culture shock that I'm intense, but, I hope it's in a friendly way, but, yeah, that luckily High Point's campus itself, like I felt pretty, like I fit in, but, yeah. And the driving, nobody knows how to drive in North Carolina. I don't know if that was the case when you were down here too, but I will own that fact because they don't.
Well, it was like your mom with the PTA. She was intense and got stuff done. So,
Hey, yeah.
Erin, I know you got a
That.
big football game and get on with your life here. But before you go, what was something that I didn't ask you that you might have wanted to talk about, or something that you wanted to share?
Sure. I think that something that I definitely have realized, like as I've been away from home, is just like how incredible and how special like the Port Jervis community is. And like I think that seriously, like I don't think that I would have a heart. Like when I was applying for jobs, like I wasn't looking for the elementary school with the best ratings or the elementary school that had the most incredible principal. Like I was looking at the communities because I was like, I want to feel like home. Like I want to be in a school that meets the standard that like Port always had. And it was that, we have every small town, every small community has its struggles. It has its own dynamic that can be challenging or come with, negative, media for different reasons. But I think that at its core, a small town is where you feel seen, and it's where you feel valued, and it's where you feel supported. And that's what I looked for in my career. And when I lived in High Point, especially, Guilford County is huge. And I just felt like way too, like High Point was great, but Guilford County, I knew I couldn't stay there to teach because I was like, this is nothing like home. Like I want to feel how I did in the community in which I was raised. And I think that the small town support and the way that people truly do, I saw it my whole life as tragedy struck our schools or our local families or, local businesses. Like people rally around that in Port, and they really do support one another from all aspects. People support our sporting event, like our sporting events are I was an athlete my whole life through Port schools, and our bleachers were always packed. The gyms were always decorated for our games, and that's the kind of feeling that I miss the most. And I just think that you don't really realize what you have until it's gone, kind of thing. And I just for all the people that made that my reality, that I'm sure many are watching now. Just thank you, because it's definitely been something that I hope to bring around and instill throughout my career and wherever I end up or where time leads me. So
2 claps for Erin there. That was well said. And you answered the last question, is what does Port Pride mean to you? But that was so well said, Erin. And it sounds like you landed in that place. It sounds like those kids need you. But to hear what you're doing and in the way you're doing it, I mean, it's in the chat here. You got me emotional just listening to you talk about what you're doing. It's really great. And as a fellow educator, I'm really proud of you. And you're shining a bright light on education. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I try to live out what was instilled in me by the best of the best as I was raised. And I most of all, I have my mom to thank for that. She's the most incredible role model, selfless woman, hardworking, individual I've ever known. And that's just, at the end of the day, that's what I want to be and model for others. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Miss Witherow's watching here. She's giving you a shout out. Miss Witherow, I'm sorry for your loss. Quick Jenny Cornell story, Erin. Your mom is a go-getter.
Yeah.
When your older brother came through, I was a high school principal. We're doing our orientation. Yeah, she called up the next day and said, Mr. Morano, like, I need more. Like, that wasn't good enough. I don't have any information. You got to do a better job. And next year, Jenny Cornell was the first person on our parent panel and really helped me do a better job with our orientation, based on her, giving me that feedback. So shout out to your mom there also. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely her child because I have the phone number to the gentleman that just installed our new playground, and our swings were hung up wrong. So I made sure I got his number to have him come back. And so I'm definitely following in the go-getter steps there. For sure,
I love it. Once a Raider, always a Raider. Erin, do you want to give any last shout outs here for us? You did a great job today on the podcast, but any last shout outs to anybody that you'd like to say hello or?
Definitely Miss Shields. If you're still watching, like I said, I had the opportunity to be lucky enough to attend High Point University, and that had to do with the generosity of my mom and hard work that I had put in to apply for academic scholarships that High Point offered based on like my GPA and my SAT and ACT scores. But Miss G. Marie was the backbone of my scholarship applications my senior year, and I will absolutely never forget that. I had free period first thing in the morning senior year, and I'd go in and she'd let me in the little conference room in the guidance room, and she'd give me my stack and she'd help me apply for things and make sure it was all organized and made sure I knew my deadlines, because she was like, you're going somewhere and you deserve it and you're going to make it there. And if it wasn't for her, encouraging me first thing in the morning as a 17-year-old, then I think a lot of those applications probably wouldn't have made it in on time. Yeah. So.
Wow. Nice shout out there. Everybody, this is Erin Cornell, really a shining star in education. And certainly here in Port Jervis. Erin, we appreciate you. As I share with Erin off air, follow us on social media to all of our alumni. Erin, this is on our Instagram page, our Facebook page. And we're hoping to start a Port Jervis LinkedIn, connecting our alumni, not only to help each other, but our current students to be able to reach out and connect with wonderful professionals like Erin, to help our next batch of Port Jervis kids get there. So that's what we're working on here. Erin, we're super proud of you. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. If you're watching this on replay, certainly leave Erin and her mom and her family a shout out in the chat. Erin, you stay on the line a little bit. I'm going to run your little highlight thing here. And
all right.
We'll talk again soon. Erin Cornell, everyone, class of 2017. Rookie Teacher of the Year down there in Belleville, North Carolina. Thanks so much, Erin Cornell.
Thank you.
All right.